Developers angry at Claude Code have started a mass cancellation campaign and are vocally complaining on Reddit. And that grumbling on Reddit has been reflected in some real-world usage data. According to Vibe Kanban, which orchestrates multiple AI agents, we've seen Claude Code hit as high as 90% of the usage recently before falling to as low as 70%, losing most of its usage percentage to OpenAI's Codex agent. Meanwhile, Gemini went from as high as 29% down to 4%, which we're not going to talk about in this video. In this video, I want to talk about the two main reasons that people are angry at Claude Code and canceling it, about AI agent benchmarking systems and what they show about Claude Code movements in the rankings, and talk about Anthropic's official response to this blowback and what are the broader implications in the coding AI agent landscape. If we head over to the Anthropic subreddit, we can see this recent post, Claude is dead, got over 860 upvotes, significantly more than Anthropic's response addressing the issue, which only got 450 upvotes. Meanwhile, the Claude Code subreddit is filled with people saying they're canceling their subscription and migrating to the competition, namely OpenAI's Codex agent. So why are people so angry at Claude Code? There's two reasons, one fairly straightforward, one fairly complex. The straightforward reason is Anthropic changed their weekly usage limits, meaning people get less bang for their buck on how much Claude they get to use for their monthly plans. You can head over to the written version of this video, linked in the description, to see the before and after. Anthropic claims it'll only affect power users, but as you can imagine, power users will be among the most vocal. The second reason people are canceling is more complex, and it's that people think that Claude is getting worse. There's a perceived quality degradation. Now, that's much harder to measure. It's somewhat subjective, and we'll get into some benchmarks from some other YouTubers to determine to what extent it's true or not. First, let's look at some of these subjective Reddit comments. We have one Redditor saying, I find Codex is better writing the minimum code required to get the job done. That was a common sentiment. Another Redditor is saying, Claude is better for rapid prototyping and creative fill-in, but Codex is better for structured, step-controlled builds following the instruction. Of course, these are just random anecdotes, but it does provide some insight as to why some people are switching. Many Redditors did cite one YouTuber who goes by the name of Gosu Coder, who has a more rigorous framework for evaluating the quality of AI agents. You can find out more at his website, Gosu Evals. I will link to that, his YouTube channel, as well as his video where he does a deep dive on this Claude Code issue with his agent evaluation framework. Now, about 8 minutes into the video, he pulls up this chart showing how different coding agents performed on his eval system. He has them perform a variety of tasks to accumulate points and then compares them based on how many points they got. And you can see at the very top is Warp Sonnet 4, followed behind by Cursor Sonnet 4. In fact, all the top 10 are Claude Sonnet 4. So what's interesting is that Claude is still the best model. It's the agent on top of the model, Claude Code, that's being called into question. And in fact, Claude Code is now towards the bottom, beneath some competitors that were usually in the middle of the pack, such as Windsurf and Crush. So this is the evidence people are using to show that Claude Code has gotten worse. However, there's several things to consider. First of all, Gosu Coder's framework is not open source. Now, he has a good reason for that. He doesn't want agents to game his system, to test on his system before they release new versions and make it so they only do good on his benchmarks, but they don't do well otherwise. However, that does mean it's harder to know if his eval framework is actually good. If none of us can take a look at it, it could have serious bugs. So it's some interesting evidence, but I wouldn't take it at strict face value. The other thing worth noting is all of these are pretty close. I mean, the top one is 27,000 points. Claude Code has around 24,000. Who's to say some tweaks to how things are scored wouldn't completely rearrange this ordering? Nothing's way far ahead or far behind. Now, I do want to circle back to this official response from Anthropic on their subreddit. They acknowledged that there were bugs causing model performance issues, somewhat vindicating the complaints. But people also theorized that Anthropic was intentionally degrading the performance of their model, perhaps using something like a quantized model, which slightly reduces numerical precision, slightly reduces quality, but massively saves on cost. The idea was perhaps during high usage, Anthropic was using that to save on cost. Anthropic, while admitting they had bugs causing issues, they completely denied that they systematically would degrade model quality for any reason. But certainly people are still going to be upset if at the same time the token usage is limited, the model quality goes down, because now you might get buggy outputs that count against that quota. So your quota is smaller and you're hitting it sooner with buggy outputs. That would explain a lot of the frustration and cancellations that we've seen. And the fact that Anthropic took the time to make an official response on Reddit does hint that this was a non-trivial blowback. It's not just a few angry Redditors. They probably noticed an uptick in cancellations that they felt they needed to address. Many people did appreciate Anthropic being transparent on this issue, although others are frustrated that they didn't get refunds for their monthly spending. Now, a few closing thoughts. While going from 83% to 70% is clearly a drop, still Claude Code is at 70%, still the leader. So this is bad news, but far from a disaster. Furthermore, we don't know exactly to what extent Vibe Kanban usage reflects broader industry usage. It may be the most hardcore users who want to be able to easily compare and combine AI coding agents versus the more typical AI coding user might just stick with one. So this is the data we have, although it's not necessarily the best data. Next, I want to circle back to Gosu Coder's graph. The first thing is that all these agents are pretty close. You'll see the number one is at 27. Claude Code is down at 24,000. That's about a 10% difference. It's not that big. Depending on maybe tweaks to a scoring system, the rankings might be different. The second thing to note is that pretty much all these coding agents are using Claude Sonnet. That caused them to doubt the narrative that Claude itself is the problem. If anything, the real story emerging is that the other agents have caught up to Claude Code at using the underlying model. But still, the fact that Anthropic creates Claude itself has to suggest that they will have a long-term advantage in customizing their agent to get the most value out of the underlying model. Finally, it's worth noting that benchmarks are very biased and subjective. They're going to be biased based on what you test, what type of tasks you give it. And furthermore, when people say the code quality is worse, there's also always going to be a degree of subjectivity to how good code is, whether a human or an AI writes it. Finally, an AI coding agent is going to be heavily influenced by the prompt and the context you provide it. Many people on Reddit are saying they're still having a great time with Claude Code and suggesting those struggling are just giving bad prompts. Oftentimes, an AI agent might fail at a task, but if you adjust the prompt somewhat or give us some helpful examples or information in the context window, it'll then succeed. So when an AI agent evaluation framework fails an AI agent on a task, it's unclear if the agent actually failed or it would have succeeded with better prompting. The biggest takeaway is that the AI coding agent landscape is very competitive. Claude Code is a market leader, but faces a lot of stiff competition, especially from OpenAI Codex agent. Thanks for watching, and if you have any comments, let me know. I would especially love feedback on any aspect of this video. I'm open to constructive criticism. Thank you.